Hey everyone, welcome to Flash Cycle, a webinar dedicated to all things sterile processing. I'm Clayton, and I'll be your guide as we discuss the newest trends and technologies and have conversations with leaders in the industry about their personal journeys. Join us today as we dive right into the world of sterile processing.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Flash Cycle. Today we have a couple powerhouses in the industry, Brian North, Dave Jagrosse. Brian, I know you've been manager of a level 1 trauma center, one of the largest health systems in the Midwest. I know you travel the country now as a regional platform specialist. So you contribute to a lot of sterile processings across the country and getting them set in good shape. Dave, almost no introduction needed. We can go on all day. I know you've been in the field about 30 years. Countless national conferences you spoke at. You travel. Founder of Dave Jagrosse Consulting. Glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good to see you both.
Thanks for being on. So, water quality, it's kind of what we're discussing today. There's some new standards out. Couple questions I want to run by you guys, see what your experience is with water quality. But first of all, Brian, I'll ask you, how are we monitoring water quality and sterile processing? How is this done? Is it a manual process? Are we checking this out digitally? How does this work?
So with the water quality, there's a couple of different ways that you're monitoring it, but specifically, ST108 maps out the guidelines. And the way that this started is ST108 actually, some people will know it as TIR 134. It started out as a recommendation, and now we have the standard of what which is standard 108. And it tells you exactly how to monitor it. You have water samples that you're going to take to make sure that it is. But again, ST108 is going to map it out 100% of how you're going to do that specifically.
Nice. Very cool. Dave, tell us about some water quality disasters that you've encountered. Like how are we fixing problems? I know they can be quite expensive. I do know this.
Yeah, listen, I'll tell you this. This is why my hair is so silver right now. It's the water quality. But no, it can have a big impact. I have worked at facilities that, you know, um, have had to stop surgeries because of the quality of the instruments. When we look at water quality, to kind of jump off of what Brian said, we're looking at utility water, what comes out of the pipes, if you will, at the sink. And then we're looking at the critical water, the final rinse. But then we're also looking at steam, because water equals steam. We're boiling water to create that steam. So our instruments are subjected to those processes, whether we're cleaning in the sink before the washer, then in the washer, it's utility water. But then on that final rinse, we're hopefully getting some critical water on there. But then if we have sort of runaway steam quality, the instruments are going to look terrible, and it's going to have an impact on what they look like and the performance of them, and impact on surgery potentially.
Right. No, Brian and I live in a region of the country where the water's not so great, so we both have experienced this in our career where, like you said, it shuts down surgeries. My first supervisor job, we just had water tanks that we just monitored if they had water or not, never really taken into effect like what the product we're receiving is. So I know things change, water quality isn't really something that's on everybody's radar. A lot of times, it's reactionary because you have a problem. So to be proactive, like Brian was saying, now we have some new standards to talk about. Now, you did just kind of briefly talk about this, Dave, but I want to let Brian have an opportunity. Like, how does water quality affect the longevity of your equipment and your instrumentation?
So your instruments have what's called a passive evasive layer on it.
Yeah.
And this layer is that layer that keeps them, if you will, waterproof. It keeps them from breaking down, so to speak. And so if we have our water quality that is not, for example, the pH of your water can affect that, how it starts to break those instruments down. And so there's different things that you do to regulate that pH,
Yeah.
like your chemicals. You're also testing to make sure the minerals, certain minerals aren't in that water because those certain minerals can cause those instruments to break down too. So when we're testing that water quality and doing all of these testing, we're making sure these things aren't present and that we have a balance of that pH in that water. You may have to, and there's all different things that you may have to do. You got to test the hardness of the water, which, like Clayton was saying, in the Midwest, our water is very hard. And then we have, when they build the stuff, we have clay that's sometimes get in that water too. And
Yeah.
that changes the chemical makeup of the water. So we have to put softeners in there and we've got to test that to make sure we have that balance because too much of anything, too little of anything, or if certain minerals are present, it's going to cause a chemical change in that water quality
Yeah,
and
it's
thus cause a breakdown of the instruments. I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, absolutely. No, that's spot on. Removing the contaminants and impurities is something that has to be
Hmm.
monitored. We have to figure it out. It sounds almost like there needs to be a custom approach to each facility individually. What works for them? Some places may have clean, water. Other places it's a little more hard. So, it's important to kind of know what your options are. Some facilities just bring in water tanks, and you manage them that way. Others, many different ways of kind of doing this. But Dave, in your experience, like what works, what doesn't work?
Yeah, it's interesting that you guys both hit on some really good subjects. Even in the north, when you're in the north, your water sources can be above ground. And in the winter, when it freezes up, they move to underground sources. So you might look for 3, 4 months and see stability and think your water, and then all of a sudden your water source changes. So you really got to stay on this. And I think that the document is great because there is a water management team in the hospital that should already have been existing. And what ST108 is pushing us to do is to get sterile processing around that table and put them into focus for utility, critical water, and steam. And then they look to have like an outside water experts to be on that team that aren't part of the hospital. This way, you
Right.
get that independent expertise. But you want to make sure that that you are, you know, attending those meetings and having a voice for sterile processing at those meetings.
Right.
To kind of
Absolutely.
piggyback on what Dave was saying about that is, the water quality hasn't changed for the hospital, but sterile processing just hasn't been at the table.
Yep.
Which, in like there's a lot of things that sterile processing hasn't been at the table for. So this is just one of those areas where now sterile processing is coming to the table, and now we are having some guidelines set forth that should have always been in place. But as sometimes it takes something to happen before we can be brought to the table and out of the vaccine.
Yeah. No, you guys both said it. Like, to really manage it, you need to bring on, other experts. For us, it was, facilities. They monitor the water, but when there was an issue, you got to bring in an expert on this stuff.
Correct.
Really important to have that kind of like unbiased person really involved with it, because like you just mentioned, Brian, the hospital's been bringing in the same water, and maybe sterile processing wasn't taken into consideration when all that was first, 100 years ago. In some situations when the water supply was tapped in the hospital, sterile processing and the quality of water in their steam really probably wasn't on the forefront. Now we have these standards. It is important to kind of bring in all the experts that we can, kind of really approach this proactively. Now we have standards. That is great. Any final words, Dave?
Well, I think sterile processing has kind of always we've always kind of been in the know, like on that, like for a hand cleaned item. We always, and this is terrible. I see people opening bottles of sterile distilled water, which costs a lot.
Yeah.
Or I see people with gallons of distilled water. So we always kind of knew the hand cleaning needed to have that clean rinse, but now we're really moving into the realm of looking at that tap water, if you will. Then in the automated washers, that final rinse, and we can't forget the cart washer, but we
Yes.
want that final rinse to be critical water. And then we want certain specifications for the water that we use to boil off to make steam. So that's really important.
Yeah, no, you said it right on. It's important to know like what water you're supposed to be using at what stage in the processes of cleaning, contamination, and sterilizing. Awesome. Brian, you have any final words for us? I know we're kind of getting here, towards the end, but I'd like to give you some last words here.
I think the main thing is, we always talk about when we talk about water quality, we talk about the tap water, we talk about the water at the sinks, we talk about everything. But I think they're really just now starting to hit on steam and how important it is to have that water quality of steam, because there's so many times we think, oh, it's the steam and that water is going to be heated up, and so we don't need to worry about the quality of that. But now we're seeing even in the instruments, we even need to worry about that steam. So that's just as important as the water in our washers, the water at the sinks. The steam water is just as important as all the others.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of, a high level overview of water. I know we can talk about this forever. It's important that, facilities kind of incorporate what works for them. But, we have standards, we should be using those. Thank you guys for continuing to be SPD advocates and evangelists out there for the SPD community. It's important that we continue to talk about these things. Dave, Brian, thanks for having you guys on today. I'm sure we'll be in contact soon. Dave, I know you're staying busy. Brian, safe travels on your ways home.
Thanks, Clayton.
Thank you.